Everyone hear me? Excellent. My name is Linda Nemec Foster. I'm an Aquinas alum, and along with my husband, Dr. Tony Foster, I am the founder of the Contemporary Writer Series. We're very pleased to be in our 14th season. And a few housekeeping items before I introduce our great poet and writer for tonight. First of all, please turn off everything except your brains. Cell phones, pagers, trust me, at a very important poetry reading, I was in the audience and I had my cell phone on very close to the podium, and it went off twice. So I think that was my husband calling me. So please turn off everything. As I mentioned, this is our 14th season. Our last reader for the season will be coming up next month, Thursday, March 24th. Same place, here at the Wege Ballroom at 7:30 p.m. The novelist Diana Abu Jaber. She is a Jordanian-American novelist and a really magnificent new voice. So please don't forget that, Thursday, March 24th. Now, before I tell you everything about Jack Ridl, who I'm sure a lot of you already know, one thing that I'm sure not too many people know is that Jack Ridl and his dream and vision is really responsible in not a small part for our Contemporary Writers Series. Jack established the Visiting Writers Series at Hope College with his wife Julie, and his series was really the inspiration for what we did and what we started here at Aquinas. And maybe Jack doesn't remember this night, but it was St. Stephen's Day, December 26th, probably 1994, 1995, when Jack and Julie had us over for dinner, their wonderful house on Auburn Avenue. My kids were still little. That means they were still living at home. My son was in high school looking at the snow drift behind your house outside the kitchen window. My daughter Ellen had little Sylvester cat slippers that your dog was going after. And we talked about the Visiting Writers Series at Hope College and how I could make that vision happen at Aquinas. Jack was very gracious, very generous, very open in ideas, and so not too many people know about that, but I wanted everyone to know about that. Thank you, Jack. Jack, of course, is a beloved professor at Hope College, where he taught for over 37 years, and he received the Michigan Professor of the Year Award from the Carnegie Foundation because of his great work with his students. But actually, we are here tonight to celebrate Jack as a poet extraordinaire, and for many years, he has been one of my poetry heroes. He has a number of amazing collections, 2 chapbooks, Against Elegies, which won the 2001 Poetry Chapbook Award from the Poetry Center, the Book Center for the Arts in New York City, judged by no other than Billy Collins and Sharon Dolan for that award. He also has another chapbook called Outside the Center Ring, and 2 full-length collections of poetry, Broken Symmetry, published by Wayne State University Press, which was the co-winner of the Society of Midland Authors Award for the best poetry book, and also his most recent book, Losing Season. What is amazing about Jack Ridl is I don't think I know of a time when I didn't know him. And I'm sure when I was 5, we didn't know each other. But it seems he's been such an important focal point for not only my life but my work. Jack's poems, no matter where they travel and in what landscape, they are just so remarkable. And whether we are reading about a basketball coach, or a high school janitor, or a circus cook, or a unique mother that loves Frank Sinatra and Bruce Springsteen in one breath, we are amazed by his sense of compassion and love. and we see it on every page and every word that he writes, and also for the readers who hold his poems in their hands. Jack Ridl.
Well, that was a really good hug. Can we do that again? Anytime. Oh, baby. Can you hear me in the front? Okay. I have to get the water. You're all right. Thank you. Bless you. I can't open this. That's how old I am. What'd you do, Pam? Jack Ridl lives. I got it. Thanks to Pam Lupke for all the work that it takes to have something like this happen. There's just thousands of things that can go wrong, and none of them did so far. Now that you have the sophisticated poet here. I have friends here. It's so nice. I had dinner with Vicki and lunch with Miriam, and you have poets all over the place here. So that makes it all the scarier. I don't know how to thank Linda and Tony. I just hope they know it's simply that I don't know how. But there's certainly enormous thanks in me, not only for all you've done, but for you, period. You know, but I do want to mention something. Linda gets all the, she gets all the attention, drama queen that she is. And Tony gets, not that much. So tonight, this is readings for you, Tony. And, yeah. Linda Foster, I mean, come on. And I kept thinking the other day, I was thinking, I get a reading, I have a poster, I come here. I work really hard. I talked for 42 and a half minutes to some lovely students, and then I took a 4-hour nap. And I get posters, I'm in the newspaper. And it's the people, it's the Tony Fosters who get no posters, no newspapers, no nothing. He works 10 hours a day. He's a surgeon. I didn't know that Byron Center needed your attention, but he was over there all day today. I figured they could heal themselves there. I don't know what they... Oh, yeah. But anyway, Tony, it's an odd thing to simply sit down and scribble and then have people show up and look at you, and it's the people like Tony that are there that keep us walking in and out of doors. I was feeling really sorry for myself. I want to tell a Tony story. I was feeling really sorry for myself one time, and I said to Tony, I've wasted my whole life writing down stuff, and I envy you. You've spent your life as a surgeon. You heal people, and he really said this. He said, "Well, I guess you could say I do, but it's important for you to know that what I believe is that artists also heal people." And that was a crisis. He didn't know that there was a crisis there for me of thinking I'd wasted my life, and he gave me a whole new way to keep going. And also, I've set a little table up outside there, and since I'm now convinced that I also heal people, there'll be a $20 copay that you can leave on the way out. Yeah. All the poems tonight will be love poems. Also decided, I feel like I'm in a puppet theater. Hi, I'm going to read the long poem first. I think that's a good way to go. And then they'll just get shorter and shorter and shorter until I read a haiku at the end, which is actually longer if you really think about it, but we won't get theoretical here. So this is the long poem, and I'm only telling you that because when you start with a long poem, you can feel the audience going, oh God, are all the rest going to be? So we'll get it out of the way. Titled Sweet for the Turning Year. Sweet for the Turning Year. Sometimes when the dogs are asleep and the whole world seems quietly poised between green and brown, when everything is lascivious with leaves, the ground, the porch floor, the holly bushes, even a few last trees, you can see a glimpse of the way the clapboard house was set within this woods, almost see them nailing the sills under the windows and carrying in the kindling. The air sifts across your forehead, and you look up, hearing the chilled jabber of the chickadees, the quick scattering of chipmunks, and in the anonymous distance, the disappearance of the sound of children, or was it a car? There is no need for a letter in the mail, no thought of putting away the pots of yellowed impatience. Just this little time and perhaps a little more. 2. Feeling this way in the afternoon, not because it's November, the burnished landscape lends an invitation to sit, a blanket across the knees that once bent and knelt to plant 100 bulbs, pull 1,000 weeds. This month's brown cold is welcome. Within the calm, there is no guilty need to do, no frantic thought that one had better take advantage of the long day's light. Oh, the dogs still need their walk, and there are dishes, but we can listen to the radio, can watch the slow breathing of the cats, look for this year's yearlings as they cross the hill behind the house. Still, the world must make space for us to sit, walk, sleep, give up itself to give us room. Later this afternoon, after I build a fire, we'll pull down our book of maps. Imagine our breath is giving something back, alchemizing oxygen into gratitude, even though we are an inconvenience in the world. 3. The sun beats down somewhere else, and the moon is lower than the tops of the trees. The cats come back from their prowl and curl up in front of the back door. Coming up the street, the headlights on the night shift worker's car turn into his driveway. We can hear the refrigerator, the pump in the basement, the fan in the bedroom upstairs. If there are ghosts, they have only our silence and the last of the moon's borrowed light. 4. Light lies on the oriole's nest, fallen empty in the euonymus. Strands of lobelia hang over the edges of the chipped terracotta pots on the back step. There's an old novel on the kitchen table, one cat asleep under the hanging basket. On the porch, a watering can is giving in to rust. The cracked pink flamingo stands bent on its iron legs. 5. 2 days of soft snow lie under the moon's stolen light. It's early winter. Now a quiet accumulation of cold comes in its slow way. I wait for stillness, its stay. Why think of winter and winter? Maybe to follow my father through the old grass into the deer's long walk across the snow. 6. Sometimes when the snow is nearly deep enough to keep us home, we stay in anyway, carry in kindling, build a fire, unfold blankets, and stack the books we open now and then. Next to us, we set a pot of coffee, add a log when we must. Wind passes, whirling little lifts of snow against the window. The dogs sleep as if we're gone. Others have to leave, we know. The mail will arrive at noon, the newspaper by evening, it won't matter as much. After sleep, there will be ashes under the grate, a little less wood to burn, more or not as much snow. We may play some Lester Young and Etta James, let his sax and her voice smolder in the coals. 7. How good it is to be in here. On the couch, the dogs asleep against the pillows at the ends, as if we are safe in the great kingdom of rain. Death, with its lisping end rhymes, stands under an umbrella. The rain against the windows is a language, its assonance an uninvited solace. Cold will come again. We can't move south. We have sweaters. We depend on a shovel and the neighbor's plow. We depend on music, on knowing we no longer need to say we love one another. Love is Emmanuel. This rain, the leaves, this music on the radio is music on the radio. The dogs sleep with their names. These leaves, this music, this rain. This, you're supposed to say this. The reason I'm fumbling is you say these pretentious things when you have a poetry reading. This is a new manuscript, and I'm fumbling around in it. And for those of you who can't wait for it to come out, 2013. So mark your poetry advent calendar and get ready for this one to blow you away. You don't know why certain things keep showing up, but dogs keep showing up. And so I've got to read the dog poem. The title's The Dog's Door is at the far end of the house. They wake up at the foot of the bed, stretch, yawn, shake, and take the long walk through 3 rooms, down the stairs, down the hall, left into the workroom, then through their door into the day's early glaze to pee. Overnight, there may have been a 4-foot fall of snow. Sleet may dagger down like a glass sky shattered by some exasperated god. An August huff of humid heat may settle in their fur. They may slip in the slick mud from a spring or summer downpour. Ticks can drop and stick. No matter, they go out, pushing their dripping noses against the cold or heat of the flapping door, leaving behind the steady hum of furnace or air conditioner, sniff their way to their well-marked spot, squat, and pee. Like stoics matted in hair shirts, they go out, come back, dry, soaked, snow-coated, mud-caked. I wonder if they wonder what waits on the other side. They never complain or balk. They walk, let go, find their momentary stay against the coming day. Finished, the young pup prances to the door, hops through, dashes to his bowl. The old dog stays out, sitting in the morning air, his great gray head moving slowly back and forth. He sniffs the center of his universe, his place in the aromas of the day. Then, his nose full, he limps to the door, lifts each front leg, pulls his back legs through, and pants his way back through the waking house to sleep. It just breaks your heart how good they are. Man, I get up in the middle of the night to pee and probably shouldn't have said that, but I'm retired from that place now, and I can say anything I damn well want. They're not nice there. I told my wife I'd try not to comment, but they're not being very nice there. Well, those are kind of solemn. So I think we all have an inner imp, and our inner imp needs to come out. I have a couple friends here whose inner imp is out way too often. Title of this poem is Knowing Now You'll Never Be a Clown. But if you were, and if your grin were painted red as a Coke can, a fire engine, red as the Tabasco sauce you spilled on your mother's carpet, and if it lifted itself from the inside of one huge ear to the other, and if your nose were a ping-pong ball begging for a swipe, and if your feet slept within white shoes 3 feet long and flapping, would you then be able to talk to everything you really want to talk to? The chickadees who come closer than your nieces, that piece of paper blown across your lawn, the rain, each nudge of green in your garden. And when you put on your coat, that United Nations of colors and scraps, that coat that would make Joseph feel he had folded himself into the pages of GQ, the one with the shoulders rolling up to your cheeks, with buttons the size of pancakes, and a hem like the border of Czechoslovakia, would you want to walk into church, quietly take your place with the choir, and just as the minister finishes the benediction, honk your horn? And when you put on your polka-dotted tie, wide as a summer afternoon, would you want to pin the squirting yellow daisy on your lapel? Sit in the meeting, and after the ayes have it, squeeze the rubber ball in your pocket? Then again, maybe you would just stay home, listen to jazz, the blues, or some swing, open each of your cupboards and talk about Tuesday, or the way the light falls across the counters, and invite Lou Jacobs, Emmett Kelly, Felix Adler, Otto Griebling, hell, the whole Clown Alley, Renicaliop. Let me say it again. Otto Griebling, the whole Clown Alley, Renicalliope, a center ring, one elephant, and get out the pies. It's great when you read through the whole poem and screw up the punchline, isn't it? You can take $50 off the check, Pam. We have any knitters in the house? Who knits? Raise your hand if you knit. Oh, that's all? There's more knitters. How many of you know somebody who knits? Oh, yeah, all right. Isn't that a nightmare? They knit everywhere. You know? Come home from the doctor, well, how was the checkup? It's fine. They're going to have to take off my arm. Oh, it's a shame. The knitters. The knitters sit with their knitting sitting in their laps, their fingers nimble as mice feet as their needles twirl two-color twitches of yarn into well-reasoned whirls. Their work, their letter to the cold world. Sunlight falls across the silence. Then, my daughter is leaving. Here the house is around them. In the fields there are horses. Do you think she will stay? Some spin their own yarn. The wool matters. I don't know. They have time in their hands. Here language has no translation. Sheep are messengers. The snow lies over their gardens, gardens that will rise in the late spring. I hope she will find something. They knit together once a week. They knit alone. They knit in church, at meetings. They say, "What are you working on?" Title of this poem is A List of Possibilities in an Uncertain Order. That's really very postmodern, isn't it? That's just so postmodern. A list of possibilities in an uncertain order. Dogs again. Dogs live knowing how to live. They alone defy Kierkegaard. Lighthouses may well still be useful. God is likely tired of being God. If you wait long enough, the shadow. Despite what they say, it can be good to take a nap longer than 20 minutes. Rain that never falls is still rain. Amen is the only way out. Honeysuckle, like love, grows anyway. Etudes could well be beautiful when played on a kazoo. The lyricism of early morning often arrives unaccountably. Now I'll read it in another order. No, I won't do that. No. When I started out doing this, like everybody, I thought, oh, it's just so easy. And of course, you realize you learn pretty fast that what's difficult about something that looks easy is the difficulty is to make it look easy. I can prove that dance isn't easy just by dancing for you. Now you know it's not easy. And the first poet that I worked with, a man named Paul Zimmer, would say it just gets harder and harder and harder because you've got, well, he said this great thing one time, Chaucer had it pretty easy. He didn't have too much. Ecclesiastes, there's a whole lot of stuff. I mean, we have all this baggage on us. When I first came to Hope College, I wrote a poem about the baseball player Willie Mays, and someone in our department was really hoping that I would be kept at the college, and showed the poem to the chair of the English department, who looked at it and said, "Well, he's certainly not Dante." And I said, "Does he know Fred Dante? Does Fred Dante write? He writes poems? He's a butcher in our town. No word on that." But Zimmer said you can't write love poems anymore, and you can't write poems about death anymore. Good heavens, they're all, no matter what Robert Hass says, they're all been written. Oh, this is a love-death poem. And it's not by Dante. I mean, isn't that a nightmare? Did anybody call him in and read the Inferno? You know, some say, hey, Dante just wrote this cool poem. You ought to read this, you know. Well, it's not Ecclesiastes. Instead of planting roses, he'd work the garden until dark, now and then looking up to see if she was looking out the window. She had loved roses. After 3 years, he gave up, started sleeping on the left side, and instead of planting roses, filled the plot with tomatoes, beans, zucchini, and asparagus. The next year, he added eggplant, and then mixed in impatience, pansies, obedient plant, asters, and autumn joy. He loved to be surprised by a tomato showing up within a mass of lobelia, to discover peas climbing a tangle of cosmos, lilies, and cleome, to find a squash under the geraniums. I'm going to read a few poems from the basketball book that's not about basketball. I guess, and I always worry because I tell these stories over and over, and then I figure, you know, so those of you who have heard there's a handful of you who have heard this stuff, and you can get up and walk around or pay your copay now instead of later, or just take a nap. My father was a basketball coach, University of Pittsburgh. They're 21-2 now, ranked number 4. They're going to win it all. Put your money on them. Of course, I said that about the Steelers, and look where I am. Growing up that way, my father was a winning coach, a successful coach, a Division I, all that stuff, blah, 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 blah. And he was an incredibly inventive coach. I just see the stuff he came up with in game after game after game after game, both on defenses and offenses. And most coaches give him credit, along with Dante, for coming up with so many of these things that almost every team in the country now uses. What's called a motion offense, what's called a matchup defense, all that stuff. Back in the 50s, he invented. He would deny that he invented it, but he did. But the thing that had the most impact upon my sister and upon me was losing. We live in one of the meanest cultures in the world. At least soccer fans just beat themselves up, you know, or, set off bombs at the end of the stadium. But we just badmouth sports all the time, you know. So Jay Cutler's a wuss, you know. He never wanted to play football, you know. He's just a little wussy guy who can't go out there. He's afraid, a little fraidy cat, you know. And Rashad Mendenhall lost the game for the Steelers the other day when he fumbled. They would have won that game if it wasn't for him, you know, and doesn't affect him. And the coach is a bum and doesn't have any kids or anything. It was just an absolutely mean-spirited world to grow up in. And it's fascinating to me that how things that you'd never say are said about these people in the sports world. You just hardly ever say them, or at least you'd keep them just around the dining table. You wouldn't write them in the paper. I actually heard... Well, those two guys, Desmond, what's his name, and anyway, and they almost got in a fight the other day because he picked on the one guy's kid. And I actually heard Wilbon say last night, I think it was, that, well, what do you mean? That's what he does all the time. That's what we're paid to do, is to criticize people's kids. They're 19 years old. Thus endeth the sermon. But the biggest effect on us as kids was losing. We seldom celebrated winning. Somebody said to me, "You watch games all the time. You're quite the fan." I said, "I've never been a fan. I don't know what it's like to be a fan. I love the game. I watch the game. I understand the game. I appreciate the game almost like an art form. I'm dazzled by human beings' abilities to do things that I think are unbelievable, to put a little ball through a ring from 35 feet out. You try it. and then boo when they miss. I mean, it's just bizarre. Well, I've said this 1,000 times, but as a kid, and so those of you who've heard this, you'll hear it again. Here comes Hank. Hi, Hank. Everybody wave to Hank. Hi, Hank. Embarrass Hank. That's good. Hi, Hank. That's our job. See if I ever shop in your store. But, you know, we as kids, we're reading that stuff in the paper, you know. So-and-so blows game, blame the coach, and the headlines. And I was a little kid. I only had little kid thinking, right? So little kids think, well, how come nobody else, you know? How come you don't pick up the paper and read, you know, car dealer blows sale at end of day, you know? Teacher turns in papers 3 weeks late, you know? Why isn't that in the paper? Why don't I get that? How do they get away? What's the difference? As a kid, what's the difference? Why is my dad being picked on and everybody else who screws up doesn't get in the paper? I don't get it. I still don't get it. Why is it news, sports, and weather? Why? Why isn't it news, poetry, and weather? This is a poem called, after you're now fed up with the guy's spout, I owe you all now for therapy from my childhood. I'll pay the $20 copay. The title of the poem's Coach Dreams of Being on Vacation. Swathed in number 4 copper tone, Coach sits in his beach chair, watching the Atlantic roll itself toward his toes, his belly white as a gull's, the sun playing him tight. He listens to the waves, the children squealing, the stockbrokers still talking big bucks as their wives try to coax them offshore, and the teenagers laughing as they roll in the cool water or whispering as they bake next to each other, fingers laced. Suddenly he wants to buy some jeans, open his shirt, take his wife across state lines. But his brain's a gym. Every move he makes draws jeers. Even here, dreaming himself a surfer, builder of sandcastles, a stud who strolls the shoreline, or just leaning back into the sand to feel the soft air sift across his body, he can hear the catcalls. You're a bum, Coach. You're a lousy bum. I was asked to inscribe a copy of this book for Barack and Michelle Obama, who are basketball fans. Her brother's the coach at Oregon State. And this is the first copy I signed for them, and I like to always read from it. It says, for Barack and Michelle O''Bama. So now you know he's an Irish Kenyan. Poor guy. Jeez. Ridiculous. One of the characters in this book is a character named Scrub. Scrub is a term, for those who are unfamiliar, the guy on the team who never gets into play. He's just, pretends in practice he plays as if he's the other team, and seldom, if ever, gets in a game. Scrub's a character who is a product of neglect, and he's one of those characters that is sadly comic in a way. For example, you'll hear in this poem, I'll give it away, he's neglected at home. He wants to be on the team. He wants to be at home. He's not cared for. He wants to be on the team. He's on the team, but he's really neglected on the team everywhere he goes. And his dream is, you'll hear his dream, it's one day to come back and be part of it. And it's just so pathetic. Scrub. It's in the voice of Scrub. Scrub. Last night at practice, my man slipped by me for a layup. And Coach threw down his clipboard, ran right up into my face, slapped me behind the head, and yelled, "What the hell are you doing? Get in front. Take a charge. You on this team or not, how are we going to be ready if you don't play tough defense?" Some mornings I wake up wondering about tough defense and wind sprints and running up the bleachers 20 times. 2 hours every night, I'm the other team. I've heard it 1,000 times. You're key to this team. Without you, we'd never be ready. But I know I do what you do when you're never good enough. Someday I'll come back and point at that place on the bench. Someday I'm going to sit back, watch TV, take a vacation every summer, have a dog, and never miss a game. You get in tonight? My father asks when I come in after the game. I knock the snow from my boots. No. Close game? No, we lost by 23. I listen to the empty air, see the slow shake of my father's head, know he's been sitting with a beer, letting one sitcom roll into the next, sneering at the ads and laugh tracks, waiting for the news, sports, and weather. I go to the refrigerator, look at the line of Budweiser cans, take out the milk, pour a glass, go in with him to watch the scores. Sometimes, after practice, I walk home slowly, and I think about letting the ball bounce away. Then I'd sit down, let my mind open up wider and wider, so wide the sky would come inside, the stars would light it all. Last week after school, my kid sister said, "I'm scared the sun will go out." That's ridiculous, can't happen. And I took her hand, looked out the window, up into the sky, watched the snow clouds cross. "But it's fire," she said. "Fire goes out." 4 wind sprints to go. Let's see what you have left. Run, run like I'm after you. Run, run now, or after the next game I'll run you till you drop. Run, God damn it, run. Once last summer, I lay in bed, wondering if somewhere hidden in my cells was something good enough that I could do. But the cells were mute. The days since then have been the same, even their names dissolving like the host upon my tongue. There's a strange sense of discovering metaphorical stuff in just the everyday. It's a surprising experience, if and I'm sure you all know it and have had it. And there's this, just the simple fact of preparing, being in the locker room, and then going down, and then bursting out into the stadium. The title is Pacing Before. You're supposed to learn to do your P's over the microphone. Pacing Before the Game. Like zoo lions on a hot afternoon, the players walk back and forth in front of their lockers. No one says a word. They stare through the floor into the center of the earth, where all losers end up, far from the light of God, day, or even a back room. Lips drawn, fists clenched around their sweaty palms, they feel the long season tighten in their legs. The practices float up and into their shoulders. They each feel a sneaky laugh rising in the back of their brain. And suddenly they want to leap into the stands, grab some kid who gets A's in math, and put him up against the other team. But there's only the clock, the door, and the gym at the end of the hall. And the last, this is the closing poem of the collection. It was interesting to just start out. This is a little craft thing. I started out writing these poems one at a time about 25 years ago, and took 25 years to write this book. Not every day, of course, but that's how long I spent on it. And as I was working on it, all of a sudden it struck me that this could be a novel. But then I don't know how to write a novel. So then I thought, I wonder if I could write this thing so that if people actually sat down and read it straight through, they would write the novel. So then I started wondering, how would you do that? So I started thinking about what little lyric moments you could create going this way that didn't have a narrative, didn't have a story, but led the person to begin to imagine and say, geez, I feel like I'm reading a novel. But they weren't. They were actually making up the novel as they go along. This is the closing poem called Night Gym. The gym is closed, locked for the night. Through the windows, a quiet beam from the street lights lies across center court. The darkness wraps itself around the trophies, lies softly on Coach's desk, settles in the corners. A few mice scratch under the stands and at the door of the concession booth. The night wind rattles the glass in the front doors. The furnace, reliable as grace, sends its steady warmth through the rafters, under the bleachers, down the halls, into the offices and locker rooms. Outside, the snow falls, swirls, piles up against the entrance. It's fun to try to use language and try to create quiet. How do you do that with words? No, I think it's going all right. No, a couple people are bored, but to hell with them. As long as they pay their copay. Yeah, I'll be home. Don't worry. The road's okay. Okay. What a sweetheart. Okay. Okay, we're running out of time. Can we do a couple little ones? Are we all right? Because I know it's hard to keep listening to stuff that's somebody. Gee, I think it's fabulous. It's a poem called Searching. Oh, boy, excuse me. This is called Searching Again for My Father. I have looked through the garage, shelves stacked with engine oil, cans of paint, piles of rags and gloves and old hats, boxes of shoes, nails, broken saw blades, and clocks. And in the crabapple tree he planted in the back left corner of the yard, in its burst of white blossoms, in the empty sparrow nest that has sat for years between the fork and a branch. Maybe here, I think, across the room, sleeping in front of the summer empty fireplace, or sitting on the mantel, looking toward the closed white kitchen door. Or here, right here, in this chair, scribbling across this very notebook, smiling at each fallen word, thinking I still don't know why. In the basement, opening the Army steamer trunk, taking out the medals, the captain's bars, the box of letters, and the pen and ink drawings he found within the rubble of France. Or under the dining table, where the dog sleeps, breathing softly, velvet eyelids ready to rise at the sound of walk. Ragged toy lion lying drool enameled by his dream-twitching nose. Or maybe in the sigh at the day's end. Maybe in the last 20 pages of the book I've been reading for a week. Maybe I passed by him at the opening of chapter 4, when I wondered why the writer, without warning, shifted point of view. My father mentions him being a captain. He was a white captain of a black company in World War II. An amazing experience. He had to fight to get equal equipment for his men. And they were often reduced to being the janitorial staff of the war. They would go in and clean the dead out of the streets and the rubble. Because they were black. They knew how to clean up. 3 more and 2 are little. Okay, I have to preach one more time. Check yourself for ticks. Not now. This is a poem for my wife who's not here tonight. Main reason is she has Lyme disease, and it's a terrible disease. And I'm very serious when I say check yourself for ticks. Your life can change forever. The title of the poem for Julie is On Going with My Wife to Her Doctor. We don't know what's wrong. We've waited for more than a year to find out what's wrong. We've waited for 5 specialists to tell us what's wrong. We've waded through thigh-length blood clots, migraines that seem the eternal twin of sustained electroshock, pains that twist her stomach into the devil's balloon animal. Every diagnosis has amounted to nothing more than maybe med after med strung out and taken daily, a rosary prescribed by priests with malpractice insurance. Now here we sit again. I try to read a month-old Newsweek. They call her name. You wait here. Yes, here is where I'll wait. No one sits next to anyone. Now and then a cough hovers over all of us. Nearly everyone stares. Now and then a sigh. Behind the counter, the kempt receptionist welcomes each entrant, checks date of birth, current address, accepts the copay. It's mid-April. It's still cold. One specialist proclaimed, it's likely lupus. Another, let's first work on those headaches. Another ordered, we'll set you up for a series of steroid shots. Can you start tomorrow? I look across the room. The television is tuned to the Health Channel. A woman in a bright pink shirt is smiling and talking about what to eat. Sitting under the set is a man, unshaven, cuts across his forehead. He has a cause and a cure. In sickness and in health, I am ashamed. I open the Newsweek, the war in Iraq. A nurse calls, John Larson. The unshaven man gets up, walks across the room. How are you today? And they disappear down the hall. I turn a few pages, Brad and Angelina and their kids. The woman on the television is talking about diabetes. The mail carrier comes in, drops a stack on the counter. Hi, girls. I think we will be okay. I think too many medications. That many cannot work together. I laugh to myself, thinking, we're living in an age of side effects. What would it be like to have an erection lasting 4 hours? I know in mid-June our gardens will be lush, blossoms surrounded by the comforting hues of ground covers, grasses, mosses. Maybe she will be glad for that. A patient sits down next to me, asks, why are you here? It's my wife. She's sick? Yes. You? Yeah, I'm sick too. I think it's just what's going around. Two more. We have a heron that lives where we live. And when you have something wonderful like that and you have the nerve to pretend to be a poet, you then go to and stare at the heron, and you think, I have to write the heron poem, you know. And so you stand there, and you get ready, and you feel it come over you, and then a voice from above goes, you are not Mary Oliver. And so instead of writing the transcendental heron poem, you decide to try to walk like a heron. And the title of this poem and the title of this manuscript, which is Practicing to Walk Like a Heron. Now, I have set this little scene even though I shouldn't, but I'm I'm here, and my wife is at the computer working, practicing to walk like a heron. My wife is at the computer. The cat is sleeping across the soft gold cushion of my chair. Last night there was a frost. I am practicing to walk like a heron. It's the walk of solemn monks progressing to prayer on stilts, the deliberate cadence of a waltz in water. I lift my right leg within the stillness, within the languid quiet of a creek, slowly, slowly, slowly set my foot on the dog-haired carpet, pause, hold a half note, lift the left, head steady as a bell before the ringer tugs the rope. On I walk, the heron's mute way, across the room, past my wife, who glances up, holds her slender hands above the keys until I pass. Isn't she wonderful? Did you see this idiot, Well, she's doing real work, right? Can't you just see her sitting there? I married that. Lovely. Well, this last poem is to say thank you. It's a really sappy poem. But it's a sappy poem for you, and it's the only way I know how to say thank you, because I never dreamed as a coach's kid I'd ever be reading poems, let alone to such warmth in a room. So thank you for coming around, for being here and listening and making a copay. I'll say it again, thank you. Title is After Spending the Morning Baking Bread, for you all. Our cat lies across the stove's front burners, right leg hanging over the oven door. He is looking into the pantry where his bowl sits full on the counter. His smaller dish, the one for his splash of cream, sits empty. Say yes to wanting to be this cat. Say yes to wanting to lie across the leftover warmth, letting it rise into your soft belly, spreading into every twitch of whisker, twist of fur and cell, through the Mobius strip of your bloodstream. You won't know you will die. You won't know the mice do not exist for you. And if a lap is empty and warm, you will land on it and feel an unsteady hand across your back, fingers scratching behind your ear, and you will purr. Thank you.